Consider this, a news and information program recorded on the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha. From the Fireside Lounge in the Milo Bale Student Center, here is your host, Carol Schrader.
Hello and welcome back to the University of Nebraska at Omaha. It's my pleasure, well, it's not my pleasure or my happiness that Sheriff Pat Thomas is retiring after 32 years in Sarpy County, but it is my pleasure and honor to have him here. Sheriff Thomas, you're going to be missed, but I'd like to sort of, I don't know, has anyone been a sheriff longer that's currently serving in the state?
Yes, I believe one.
So you're right up there in terms of...
We're real close. I think he beats me about a month or so.
And what county is that?
It's Mr. Chase, Sheriff Chase in Dixon County.
Okay, so
north of us,
you folks in Dixon County.
He's a good man.
He is a good man, and so are you. The thing that amazes me is that you were, what, a parole officer? When you were
I was
tapped?
an elementary school teacher.
Okay, right, I remember.
And then I investigated all the beaten and battered and neglected children. And in with that, I became they had me be a probation officer along with that. And then from that, I got appointed sheriff of Sarpy County, and from there I've been sheriff ever since.
Interesting background, and not having actually been on the department to take over what was kind of a troubled department at the time, without making anybody look bad, but it was...
Yes, it went through a lot of turmoil. There was a whole lot of turmoil there, and I basically started from scratch and got to where we are today.
So when you first came in, you were a definite outsider. Not an outsider in terms of knowing people in Sarpy County. It was about 32 years ago, even though it's grown so much, it was still kind of a closed community. Everybody kind of knew everybody.
It was a rural community.
Yeah. And you came on and did you clean house? And what was the biggest challenge at that time for someone that was kind of in the system but not?
Well, we were moving into the new Hall of Justice, a new jail, state-of-the-art jail, I remember, that would house 46 prisoners.
Wow, whole 46, huh?
And the following Saturday we had 79 in jail, and it was full from that day I became sheriff on, until we built the new jail and we're full again. And but that was an administrative nightmare trying to do that, and then to hire and educate and train people to do the job, and the salaries were very low. The benefits were hardly anything. So from there we progressed to where we are today.
Well, Sarpy County is, I believe, the fastest growing percentage-wise county,
it is,
developing county in the state. So you went from a highly rural county, even though, you know, the Offutt Air Base housed then the Strategic Air Command, so that was kind of the hub of population at that time.
It was.
But now you've got Papillion growing, La Vista, a number of smaller communities. Of course, Bellevue is just, you know, took off. And it's now part urban, definitely urban, and then it's still a lot rural.
That's true.
It's got two faces.
That's true. It's really an administrative nightmare trying to be a local police department, but you're really a sheriff's office, but you're patrolling in areas, precincts, just like the city police does. And there's not much rural left anymore, and it's going fast.
Okay, so you came in at a time when the whole law enforcement world was facing a need to become more professional. It's a time when we went through and were passing through civil rights, and there was a lot of talk about the rights of suspects and prisoners. So there was that whole end of it. There was also, along with that, professionalism, more education that sheriffs and police chiefs had to do. People were starting to go to school to get degrees in law enforcement. So you kind of came in on that wave and had to help ride it.
Me and a few of the other sheriffs pushed to get a training center, which we have now at Grand Island, the Nebraska Law Enforcement Training Center. And right at that particular time, you could just come in, hand the guy a gun and some shells and a car, and that was it. That was all the training they had. But it's progressed from there into what we now have as criminal justice degrees, and you can get a real good one here at UNO. And in fact, you can get master's degrees now. That was unheard of then. It was just absolutely unheard of. And it's kind of, if you watch the computer business, the computer business is piggybacked from that too. Because at that particular time, very few people even knew how to spell computer. And then the computer came on, and it's progressed to where it is today. And now you can get a degree in computer science. And so law
So
enforcement
yeah,
is,
those kinds of things were sort of parallel, and they sort of blossomed at the same time. Speaking of computers, now certainly most of us know, we were talking about this before the show, that everything they do on CSI cannot be done in a span of an hour. For those that would like to have all these secret, super secret clues that are going to bust cases wide open. But in addition to paying your people more, giving them some better benefits, you know, they're becoming more educated, so they're investing in their own worth, so to speak, so they need to be paid more. Then you needed to get computers, and you needed to, I mean, there were all kinds of expenses that police and sheriff's departments went to go through to become the modern ones they are. That must have been a tough battle at times.
It still is. So for instance, we were the first to get the mobile data computers. So we have a computer in the car now, and we'll soon be writing our reports from the cruiser. We have cameras. Who ever heard of having a camera in a police car? And all of the different technological stuff that's in the cruiser. And one of the big problems is they haven't made the cruiser bigger. And and of course,
yeah, to have an office and the ability to cage off dangerous people in the back seat.
if they can get in the back seat.
That's true.
And of course, the typical American today is much larger. I always thought I was pretty big, but today I'm not. When you have average 300-pound football players, you imagine one of them getting his degree and trying to get into the cruiser. And I have some, and they're good, but I can't understand why the engineers haven't caught up with technology, because it's just about impossible to get into the cockpit of the cruiser now.
That's true. So you've lived through some interesting times. I think that the case that certainly stand out, one of the cases that stands out in your career, is the case when there were two 13-year-old boys in your county that had been abducted, tortured, and murdered.
That's right.
And that was, what year was that?
It was 1983.
I'm sure
September.
you won't ever forget it.
18th.
And there was a manhunt, and had you ever faced anything like that?
No, never. No, that was the first time for something like that with that magnitude. And in doing so, when people love their children, and when we had the first little boy disappear, we knew that it was going to happen again. We didn't know where.
Just because of the type and
because of profiling the case, we knew it happened again, and it did. And it was just terrible that it happened again. And
one of the things you knew, I mean, I'm sure there was a lot going on. In fact, I had known ahead of time, as some of the media had, but they did a pretty good job of not saying some of the things you held close to your vest, such as the rope, that the rope was probably going to be a key. We knew there was a different rope and that it probably came from Offutt, but you know, we didn't want anybody else. Yeah, we didn't want anybody to know that. It's a lot tighter down there now. You can't get information as well, which I suppose is good. But you taunted this person out there who was profiled as probably a man, and they profiled certain characteristics that were pretty close to being what John Joubert represented when you caught him. But you taunted him on the on television.
Well, I didn't know whether it'd work, and to this day I'm still not taking 100% credit that was what did it. But yeah, I thought that was one shell in my gun I would try, and consequently, soon after, he did what I hoped that he would do, and that was try to do something to an adult that could get a description or to get some kind of information that would help us. And it
that was
did.
the lady in the church?
That was Mrs. Weaver, the lady at Aldridge Gate Church.
And
it was a preschool. And he went there, and he had a lot of ideas. He had a knife in his hand, and she's very lucky that she got out of there without him killing her.
But you need to flush him out, so to speak.
You need to flush him out, because there he was sleeping in the barracks with his friends with a picture 10 feet away, and no one could figure out who he was, and it was a very good picture of him, but they just didn't put that with him. And so many people, even today, think these killers run around with a big K on their forehead, and they fit into society, and it's hard to really find them without some kind of probable cause or information or evidence that you can pin to them.
That was a covering that was one of the hardest cases to cover. So I can't imagine having to have, live in that county, know that what the parents have gone through, knowing that he probably will strike again, and I know the forensics were as good as they could have been at that time. You certainly had resources from outside your department that were willing to help and did help, but it's got to be is it the hardest case you've ever had in terms of emotion?
It was because it put so much fear in every person in the county with their children, and it was just horrifying with people that they couldn't let their children play in the front yard or the backyard, or had to walk them to school and be with them all the time, because we had no idea when he would strike again or where.
I think it's the first time, and correct me if I'm wrong, since Charles Starkweather. Now that was a broader thing,
right,
because he was on the run, but that I remember that kind of, you could almost smell the fear of people.
Oh, absolutely.
In a community. It was that kind of
it was just
visceral thing.
But I will give the press a lot of credit, and especially you, because you kept the people informed and told them, watch for your children, and they did that. And I feel fortunate. I feel horrible that there was 2, but there could have been more, and the press helped prevent that.
You recently had a case that ended up, it was a bad enough case when you were just looking at a young couple lost in a snowstorm in Nebraska, and when all was said and done, it made national headlines. But take us back to just less than a year ago in the middle of the winter, and there was a young couple that had been on the phone, didn't know where they were, trying to find it, and you knew they were lost.
Yes.
Take us through what happened.
They were on their cellular phone. They were lost. And of course, we have technological problems with cellular telephones in Nebraska. But there again, those are not the only problems that we have. That's the only ones that's been, I guess, made the headlines. We have others, probably just as important, maybe if not more important, that may be cheaper, I don't know for sure, but probably would be cheaper, that would help everyone concerned. But I felt so sorry for those 2 young kids. I mean, there she was, a college student, bright, going to a real respected school, and then the problem is meth. And so many
You didn't
people,
know that until, although you might
we
have
suspected that
because of the conversations
we
with the
suspected that
emergency
because
operators.
of the way what they did and so on, because that's typically what people on meth do. We've interviewed people that have pulled robberies, and they don't even know where they robbed and who they robbed and so on because of the meth, but yet they become very violent.
The bottom line was this couple was not dressed properly because your metabolism's so high that you're warmer,
Right.
and have a real odd sense of how cold it is around you, perhaps. Their paranoia, all kinds of things that came out, when we pieced it backwards. You could see happening, but there was nothing that you could do. And then when you were searching in these rural parts of Sarpy County with snow on the ground, along a dike that you couldn't necessarily even see the edge of,
Right.
it turned into a very good manhunt on the part of you guys doing everything you could do, not knowing where these people actually were,
Right.
but a very dangerous. And
It's dangerous because of so many sloughs, little lakes, big lakes, water. It's all covered by snow, and some of them have thick ice you could walk on. Some of them is real shallow, thin ice. Some of them had underground springs that was, eating away at the ice, and it looked like you could maybe walk across, but it would be very deadly if you did.
And it turns out that most of that searching was done after these young people had already passed.
Yes,
But it could have been a double tragedy.
it could have been, yes.
When your county held a news conference, and you had all the players up there that kind of, until that time we didn't publicly know too much about the meth problem, and you laid it all out for us, and you kind of sat back in that old Pat Thomas kind of way, and you kind of watched some very capable people conducting this, and then you wanted to have the people in front talk about how bad this meth stuff was.
Yeah.
You've seen it erupt. That's another thing that's been during your tenure. From back in the days when it was just bikers
Right,
doing meth,
right. Selling heroin,
Yeah,
cocaine.
yeah, and to this meth explosion. That's something you're going to leave for the next guy to have to worry about.
I pray that they can do something about that, because now it's very mobile. You can make it in your car. We just arrested some people in a mobile lab in their vehicle, driving around making meth. And a little handful is real expensive to, they can sell it, a little handful, and make a lot of money. So it's a very lucrative business. And if you use it one time, you're hooked worse than any addiction I know.
Remember, other than heroin, they used to say, boy, cocaine, you take it once, and this that doesn't even compare. I mean, it's still dangerous.
Not even in a league with meth, not even close. And so now that's the way it is, and some of the people know that they can do this and make money, and they're doing it.
There's no disincentives. I mean, yes, you're out there, you're willing to catch them with good intelligence and good reporting from citizens. This can be done, but in their mind, there's no real disincentive.
That's exactly right. And it's going to be a struggle to put an end to this. Plus, what do you do with them when you catch them? If you put them in jail, I just had one in jail for over a year, and I was talking to him, and I said, I hope you've learned your lesson. He says, I can't wait to get out tomorrow because I need some more meth. So now, how do you turn someone like that around? I don't know. And so tomorrow, he'll probably be at it again.
When you started out, could you imagine that you would have been dealing with these kind of little mini meth factories, and that you would have had to especially equip your personnel, and because it's very hazardous, potentially extraordinarily hazardous, but just being around any of the fumes or materials is hazardous to your people.
That's another facet to it that I don't think a lot of people understand, that when we get a meth lab, we call the people out of Kansas City, and they come in special uniforms, and they dismantle it and try to make the area safe for us. And it's very expensive, takes time, a lot of technology involved in doing that, and it's just a never-ending drain on the economy and on the taxpayers to fight it.
So what are you going to do? You're going to hunt for those morels, those mushrooms? You're supposed to be such a pro at that.
We joke about that a lot. I don't really do as much as we joke about, but yeah, I'll do some. But it's like that song I heard the Little Irishman sing, yesterday is history and tomorrow's a mystery.
It won't be for you in a way, because you're not a mystery. You're a little deeper than people would imagine, but you're a guy that's been involved in politics, considered the mainstay, the backbone of the Republican Party in Sarpy County and environs, because they say that your influence sort of spills over county lines. Were you always that political?
I never considered myself ever political. I didn't like that term.
Why is it they're willing to bow down to you in Sarpy County as being...
I don't know. I considered myself a lawman, and I just considered myself a lawman, and that's what I was really wanting and doing. But I knew that every 4 years I had to run for election, and so I was lucky there to get elected. But in doing so, I guess you get that reputation, and there again is people's perception. But I just don't consider myself a big-time politician. But I've helped a lot of people in offices, and mentored some of them, and coached some of them, and so on, only because I felt that they were great people and would help society, and that's why. But out of that, I get this, I don't know what term you want to call it, the Godfather or something. Some of them have even said that. Please don't call me that.
You know, when I first started in news, and the first time I met you, I'm not real tall, but I'm above average in height, and you were towering above me. And of course, when you're young, people take on a larger dimension. But you always struck me as kind of the kind cowboy sheriff. You know, kind of a little old school, and you're big, kind of lumbering guy, so you've got that kind of John Wayne thing going for you. But you always were so soft-spoken, even when I'd seen you kind of angry. But you never, you weren't a yeller and a screamer.
No.
You were, you always kind of stood back and measured people and situations up. Is that a good read, or am I flattering you?
I think so. Well, no, I try to do that, I guess. I guess that's just my makeup. Like my old school principal, he and I used to joke about, you got to learn them. you know, which isn't the proper grammar, but
No.
you know, you try to teach people not to break the law and why it's wrong to break the law, and it doesn't do any good to yell and scream, only maybe with a few, and but you try to keep them out of harm's way.
So in essence, you feel, in addition to being a lawman, which that's how you see yourself, you've never abandoned being the teacher.
No, not really. I haven't given up, but I have beat my head against a rock wall with some people.
Well, that any
Trying to-
teacher that's taught in the classroom very long will tell you they've done that.
You try to say, no, 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 you don't do it that way, and they just keep doing it that way. And I haven't given up, but that's been frustrating.
We've turned into the next century, so you've overlapped centuries, so to speak, in your tenure. What is let's say this, as we continue into the 21st century, what is that going to mean for officers? What do you see are the challenges for law enforcers, particularly those that have the bigger rural with a touch of urban in them? What challenges are they going to face?
Well, Sarpy County is a unique county, as we've discussed. It's fast growing. It's a young population. It's the people there have pretty good salaries. It's a good place to raise your children, to work. Probably not as good to retire because it's expensive. But from that, we're getting into the new generation. And I hear a lot of talk about the new generation. And
Of people in general or cops?
in people in general. And the new generation seems to be entirely different than the generation that I grew up with.
But you're supposed to say that at your age, not that you're ancient.
I know,
I'm getting to say it myself.
Everyone kind of says, well, the reason you say that is because of your age. Well, that's true too. But on the other hand, we didn't get a Visa card sent to us every week to whatever. And I didn't have a cellular phone or a laptop computer or a new car and all the things given to me that a lot of this new generation has. And from out of that, you have to teach the new generation to work. And many of them don't want to work. They want to be the boss tomorrow. And what did you do for me today? And so that's what we're dealing with now, and that's going to be an obstacle down the road.
So I don't suppose, as either the man that has been a teacher and never really stopped being a teacher, or a lawman, that creates a society that's less civil, and perhaps in terms of considering each other, pretty kind of maybe egocentric society. Is that what you're saying? And
I think so.
that has ramifications for both teachers and law enforcement.
Yes, it does. The classroom's totally different today than it was when I was there. I feel sorry for the teacher today. I really, truly do. And many of the parents don't know how to spell the word no, and certainly don't know what it means. And they need to do that if they think they're going to be successful with their children. Because, as my old principal said, to be successful with children, you got to be good and you got to be lucky. And most of it's luck. But it's certainly informative if you can say, no, Johnny, you can't do that, and mean it.
Budgets have been tight all along in your time because of the growing of the community and things. But we've had some years recently that have been pretty tight. State aid has been
Yes.
shifted. I imagine if you're a sheriff out in even a more rural area, they really face some tough times. What do you see are going to be the biggest financial challenges based on the increase in technology and things that sheriff's departments and law enforcers are going to face?
Jails.
Size of jails, they keep getting bigger.
Yes, because, for instance, the meth is a part of that. One little piece of meth can wreck your society because you have to have more policemen, more drug investigators, more prosecutors, more defense attorneys, more judges, more probation officers, more courtrooms, more jails, because it seems like that's the only way right now to handle it.
And it's not just, it's all the ancillary crime that goes along with that.
And all of that building up, it's a tremendous problem. And then our growth and so on.
I've heard you say that publicly that this meth really scares you in terms of the future of both children and communities.
Yes, it truly does, because when they get to a party and you're under a lot of peer pressure, which these kids are, and it only takes one time and that's it, you're hooked. It isn't like smoking where maybe you'd have to smoke a pack of cigarettes before you get addicted to nicotine. or drink a case of beer or whatever one time with meth, and it's over. It's done.
So, as you leave office, what are you going to say to your troops in terms of what lies ahead for them, and or your salute to them, or your last words? Have you thought about that?
A little bit. I thank them for all of their professionalism and their hard work and their dedication. And I wish that we in the Sarpy County Sheriff's Office had a retirement similar to some of the other agencies. A lot of people think we do. We don't.
Do you mean in terms of benefits, or?
Yes. For instance, the State Patrol can retire after 20 or 25 years. Omaha Police can retire. We don't have that benefit, and neither sheriffs. And there's only maybe 1 or 2 counties in the state of Nebraska that has any sort of retirement. The others, it's nearly impossible to have any under the retirement system that they claim that we have. It's a joke. It's not there. And
Maybe you can lobby a little in your.
I would hope to do that. I would hope to help them out, because being in law enforcement is a young man's game. And there's one of the reasons, too, that I decided to retire, that in fairness to everybody concerned, all pro football players have a limited time, and professional sports people, and in law enforcement, it's a young man's game. But one of the reasons...
You need to be top of your game all the time.
And you need to be on top all the time. And one of the reasons a lot of these other agencies, they can't get out is because it's not there. The retirement's not there as the other agencies have. And so I hope to, in time, get that resolved.
We have about 40 seconds left. Is there anything you would have done differently?
No, I can't think of anything. No, I've thought of that. No, there's nothing I think I could have done differently. Well, sure, I suppose if I had a crystal ball, I would have called a different, maybe East Coast offense, but no, there's nothing I would have changed.
East Coast offense, that's a good one. Thank you so much, always maintaining your sense of humor. Sheriff Patrick Thomas, when you see this, he will be retired as Sarpy County Sheriff. Thanks so much, and thanks for all your good years.
Thank you, Carol, for all your help and support and your professionalism.
Thank you. We'll see you next week.
To view this edition of Consider This or past programs, visit our website at unotv.unomaha.edu. For comments or questions, call 402-554-2516 during regular business hours. Consider This is a production of UNO Television.